Hello, everyone, and welcome back to English Cozy Chat, an easy English podcast where you can learn English in a fun and natural way. Today, we are going to be talking about how my kids speak four languages and what it's like raising multilingual kids. We are going to be talking about my personal experience along with some strategies on ways that you can raise multilingual kids in a successful way. There are many different situations where many languages are spoken at home and also in the community. So there are lots of kids that learn different languages at one time. Many people think that as long as a child receives enough exposure to a language, they will automatically learn it, which is true to some extent. But if there are many languages spoken in different situations, there are certain ways that you can raise your kids that makes it easier for them to understand and speak all of these language easily and to be able to tell the difference on the times when they should speak those languages. There are many different strategies on how you can raise multilingual kids, but today I just wanted to share my personal experience and share the strategies that we have used that has allowed my daughters who are 4 years old to successfully be understanding and speaking four languages. Keep in mind that I am no expert on this topic. However, I have done lots of research on ways to raise multilingual kids, and I know quite a lot about it. So first, I wanted to explain our personal experience. I am American and my husband is German. So when we had kids, we knew that I was going to be speaking English with them and that my husband would only be speaking German with them. Between he and I, we speak English. Ever since the girls were born, we have been pretty strict on only speaking our mother tongue to the girls. And now that they are 4 years old, they have a great level of English and a pretty good level of German as well. I generally have been around them more since my husband is just out of the house more. But either way, the level of English and German that they have are very strong. So, for example, when we all eat dinner together, it is a mix of English and German. My husband and I speak English to each other. And if my husband wants to say something to one of the girls, he says it in German and they respond in German. And I do the same in English. I luckily understand a lot of German and can also speak a little bit, but this really helps conversation to flow and for communication to really be easy between all of us, even though I'm not a fluent German speaker. Now, I know I said they speak four languages, and their first two are English and German, and now for the other two. We live in Spain, where obviously Spanish is the national language, but we happen to live in Catalonia, which is a region in Spain where Catalan is the official spoken language. So at school and in public, everything is in Catalan. My girls were at home with me until they were 2 years old, and then they started daycare. When they started daycare at 2 years old, They did not understand or speak any Catalan, but after about 6 months, they started to gradually start speaking. And since then, their level of Catalan has grown and grown. And now they have a pretty decent level of Catalan. They speak it fluently, and I think they understand about 95%. I do know that sometimes they ask me what certain words mean, so they don't understand absolutely everything, but they do understand the majority. And while Catalan is the official language spoken by the teachers and administration at school, many kids at the school speak in Spanish. So many times my girls will also speak in Spanish because it is the language that they speak with their friends. And they also understand it very well. I hear people also speaking to them in Spanish frequently, and the girls always understand what is said to them. So at this point where they are 4 years old, I am very happy with how their communication is going. They do a very good job of knowing when to speak which language. They will always speak English with me. They will always speak German with my husband. And at school, they will always speak Catalan. There are some people who have tried to practice their English with the girls at school, and the girls refuse to speak English there. They know that that is a place where they need to speak Catalan. And now for the strategies on how to raise multilingual kids. Strategy number 1. Decide on the language that you want to speak to your child before they are born. This may sound silly. People might say, of course I will know the language that I want to speak to my child before they're born. But I know many multilingual families where the mother tongue of the parents is not the one that they speak between each other. For example, I have a friend who is Chinese and his wife is Spanish. Between them, they speak Spanish. And so when my Chinese friend's son was born, he just spoke Spanish to his son since that was the language of the household. However, whenever his son turned 2 or maybe 3, he decided that it was really important to him that his son speak Chinese. So at that point, he started only speaking Chinese to him. Well, at that point, the child was already speaking in Spanish and was used to speaking to his father in Spanish. So he continued to do so. It was also a bit confusing for the boy, considering this was a new language coming from his father, who had always spoken Spanish to him. Either way, it was very important to the father that his son speak Chinese. So he's still doing everything that he can to try to teach his son the language. The son is gradually starting to understand and speak a little bit in Chinese, but it is more difficult for him now that he is getting older. On the other hand, my husband decided before my daughters were born that it was very important to him that they spoke German. So since they were born, he was always speaking German to them, even though that he and I spoke in English. We also know many other families that have a similar situation to us. And generally, when one language is spoken to the baby since birth, they are going to be able to understand and speak a good amount of it in most cases, as long as they hear it enough. And I don't want to say what my friend did was wrong by not speaking Chinese to his son from the start. Having a baby is such a big deal and comes with so many stressors and uncertainties. And he was probably just trying to do what was easiest for himself, his wife, and the whole situation without really thinking in the long term what language was really important to him that his son spoke. Strategy number 2, get your child speaking early in your mother tongue. This is one that many people don't think about. But when you know there are going to be multiple languages for that child to learn, it is very good to try to get them speaking early in your mother tongue. That way, they can start developing that language from a very early age. This helps them to have a good baseline language. While many people think that simply talking to a baby will help it to start speaking early, there are certain strategies that you can do that can really help them to start communicating verbally from a very, very young age. I have to give a shout out to Speech Sisters who offer a program that gets babies to start speaking early. I read this program when my girls were babies, and I implemented a lot of these strategies. As a result, my girls were speaking before they turned 1 year old. They started saying their first words at 9 or 10 months old and could speak pretty well for their age before they even started walking. I think that these strategies that I implemented, thanks to the Speech Sisters program, really helped them to develop their language early. For example, I used lots and lots of repetition. For example, if I was going to read them a book, I would say, "Do you want to read a book? A book? Do you want to read a book? Book?" I know it sounds silly, but they learned the word book very early because I gave it so much repetition. I did the same thing with other important words, such as water. Water, or wawa, what they said starting out, was one of their first words. And that allowed them to communicate with me when they wanted water. It was very positive having them communicate from such an early age because they were able to really develop their English language much earlier than many other kids that I knew. And this is always very great for parents to finally be able to understand your child after so many months or maybe years of only having them cry and say sounds. I also read very simple books to them over and over again, which helped them to remember these words and eventually repeat some of them. My husband, on the other hand, did not implement some of these strategies like I did from Speech Sisters. He simply spoke with them in German. And they did start repeating words that he said at an early age, but not quite as early as English, and definitely not as much. Strategy number 3, one parent, one language. This one is very important. Children get very confused if the same parent speaks more than one languages to them on a frequent basis. This makes the child confused on what language that they should be speaking to that parent. Some people think, hey, I know 2 languages. I want to speak both to my child so that they learn both. Most likely, this is just going to cause confusion. Or in certain situations, people may speak one language to their child when they're at home and another language when they're out in public or with friends. For example, since we live in Spain, there are many times that we are speaking Catalan or Spanish to our friends. And in those cases, my husband and I always switch to either English or German when we are speaking directly to our kids. And you should always be speaking the same language to your child, whether you are at home or in public. I want to give another example. I have a friend who is Swedish, and his wife is Spanish. At home, they speak Spanish together, and my friend always speaks Swedish to his daughter. However, he was only speaking Swedish to her when he was by himself with her or at home, but whenever they were out with friends, he would speak Spanish to her since that is what he was speaking with other people, and he didn't want to sound rude, speaking another language to his child that no one understood. So what happened? His daughter, who initially was speaking a good amount of Swedish, gradually stopped speaking Swedish to her father. She just started speaking Spanish to him. Why? Because he showed her that she can speak Spanish to him if she wants to, and he will respond. And for her, Swedish is not really a useful language. Why will she make an effort to speak another language with her father when he already speaks the language that she's the most comfortable in? So this caused a problem for him because he really wanted her to only speak Swedish to him. He then started getting a little bit more strict, I would say, with only speaking Swedish to her, and she gradually started speaking more Swedish to him. When a child knows that you will only speak one language to them, they have no other choice to communicate with you but to respond in that language. When my girls say something to my husband in English, which is not so often, my husband will say, "What did you say? I didn't understand you." Or, "How do you say that in German?" And he will help them to say it in German, or they will just think and figure it out on their own. They know that if they want to communicate with their father, they have to speak German. And this has helped their German to become better and better. Again, I don't want to say what my Swedish friend did was wrong. It's just what he felt was right at the time. But looking back, he wished that he had only stuck with Swedish with his daughter. Sometimes we don't realize the results of our actions and what that is going to lead to. And that is also okay. Strategy number 4, increase the exposure of the language that is spoken the least through toys, music, and television. In our case specifically, my girls spend lots of time speaking English with me. They spend all day at school speaking Catalan and Spanish, and they spend the least amount of their day speaking German with their father. So what we have done is buy interactive toys that speak in German or sing in German. Our girls love these toys and many times will repeat the things that they have heard on the toys. Our 2 favorite ones are the Tony box. This is a small box that you put figures on top of, and they sing or they tell stories. And we have a lot of these in German. And another one are tip toy books, which are interactive books which come with a pen, and the kids can point the pen on the different characters or objects of the book, and the characters talk or the objects make noises. And it's just a very engaging and interactive toy, which really helps them to learn the language from a different source rather than their father. And lastly, there's always the television. I really love watching movies with my girls, and when we do, we always watch them in English. Also, if we watch them as a family. However, if the girls watch TV without me, they really like watching some educational programs in German. This just helps them to receive more German input. And it also helps me to feel better about letting my kids watch TV. At least it's helping them to learn more of another language, right? Again, these are only my personal experiences and the things that have worked for our family, but I don't want to say those are the only way to do it. I just thought it was interesting to share with others because maybe it could help someone else in their situation. I would really love to know in the comments, what kind of situation do you have? Do you speak one language at home? 2 languages at home? What languages are your children learning? Do they speak another language at school than they do at home? I would love to know any of these things. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I cannot wait to see you in the next episode. Bye.